dear viewers of the podcast Caught in the Motion. With me, the main host, Javor Ivanov, and with my favorite co-host, Kubrat Ivanov, more known as Kubi.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode, which is episode 29 I believe.
Yep.
So we're nearing towards the 30th episode, and this episode is also very special as we focus on something that's more contemporary. We're focusing on geopolitics, propaganda and the pestilence in Europe, which has been caused from a multitude of different decisions from various different political leaders, and has effectuated for a myriad of negative effects in Europe. So Javor and I, we're here today to maybe with an ulterior motive provide our own analysis and opinion, and we'll see whether some of you guys agree, some of you guys will disagree, and if it's possible even the hateful comments. It's very interesting to look at the opposing perspective when it comes to something as important as this. So, in the last 100 years, Europe has faced a huge political, economic transformation, and you might even say cultural, with countries changing, the fall of Yugoslavia. And the main aspect, I suppose, out of that is, how has the geopolitical transformation in the last 100 years?
There is a lot of changes the last 100 years, but in the same time, some of the major players in the international scene still more or less the same. That's the United States of America. After the First World War, the Soviet Union becomes stronger after the civil wars ended there. But the new player in the economical and political scene is China. That's what's changed last 100 years, and always the world, it's a simple, maybe cliche saying the world is changing all the time and every day. And definitely the world is changed last 100 years. We have the Chinese, their economics is very strong.
Yeah.
But of course that hasn't been achieved for a day. This achievement is product of long-term strategies which China started 20-30 years ago. And when you make the right decisions for these changes and developing the economics and becoming a major player in the international market, then the success is there, even though if you can simplify it that way. And so, it's changed, and it's very important because we are in Europe to say about the geopolitics that Europe is always safe by its strongest neighbors from the east, Russia or the Soviet Union, because we should not diminish the official numbers of 28 million people from the Soviet Union died defeating Nazi Germany.
And there's an extrapolation that it's up to 35 million
nowadays.
It's more like historians.
More likely, for me, it's more plausible to believe that she's 35 million because the statistics weren't there.
Yeah.
The modern technology, they weren't there. So, but for Europe as well, it's important that the United States play a very vital role in the geopolitics in Europe. The First World War, if the United States did not enter the war on the sides of the French, they were losing the war. So this, if you like, neighbors, one from the other side of the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, United States, and the one in the east of Poland, now it's Belarus and Russia, always play a major role in the European politics and economics. And the First World War, how I said, the war could have ended in a completely different way if the United States did not enter the war. Second World War, the same. If the United States did not enter the war, more likely the communism will spread in all West Europe. So, but in the same time, the Soviet Union saved Europe from the Nazism. And we enjoy freedom, if we can say freedom now, because it's declined, this privilege in Europe. Unfortunately, we will talk about it. We own these two United States and the Soviet Union. Um, and it's important for when talk about geopolitics is the leaders in Europe to realize that we cannot start to have a really bad relationship in any possible level with Russia, now
No.
Russian Federation and United States, because this is not in the advantage of Europe.
No, and
I know it's very hard to balance, but really, the history proves that if the Americans did not come to save Europe and the Russians in the East save us from the Nazi Germany, if we don't realize that, like, for example, the previous leader 20, 30 years ago, like Schröder, Berlusconi, Jacques Chirac, they knew where is Europe. They were proud to be European, but they knew the weaknesses of Europe and the strong points of Europe. Our strong points were diplomacy, work with the Russians, be friends with the United States.
yeah,
And that was driving and booming the European economic. And then, of course, you have less homelessness, you have prosperity, economical prosperity in the societies. Freedom was enjoyed much and widely. Today is a completely different story, and our leaders, ours, when I said it's not mine, but because they're in Europe and we're in EU, do quite opposite. And the game is changed. Europe is diminishing economically,
yeah.
and they are treated like a like a third world country, EU leaders, because they brought. We will discuss about that. They brought Europe to this terrible situation.
But even the point that you brought on about China, how in the past 20, 30 years they've had the Pituletka, the 5-year plan, where yes, it's maybe derived from more socialist outlook point of view, notoriously, but when an economic approach is proven to work, you want to distinguish between where it's originally derived from and can it be utilized even in today's society. So the same way that you had the paradigm established by China, where they're making smaller, bigger choices, we'll say, big choices, 5 years that in the long term led to greater success, which puts them in the position that they are today. Even I have a couple of friends from Asia, and even one specifically from China. Even when he was over there, he came back, there's a huge difference between the infrastructure, the economy, and even there was a personal incident with his family, how it was dealt instantly with, and the laws that they have, because they're light years ahead. And I live in Ireland, but when I visit there and I come back, it feels like I'm visiting a downgraded country. And he doesn't say this with hatred or anything related to that. He's just speaking factually, first-hand experience. And the same way that they were making the correct decisions, Europe was making the incorrect decisions consistently for what, 20 years now? We can easily say 20 years. And the same way that you saw the rise of one country, coincidingly, you saw the fall of a whole continent.
Yeah, and here I maybe didn't mention, which is very important, the energy security of Europe. These leaders today, they don't consider that energy is very important. They just want to defeat in somehow Russia. But the previous leaders, they realized very well, they knew, and they take it every day into account, that Europe does not have gas.
No.
Does not have oil, a part of Norway, but Norway is not part of EU. And that you have to work with the Russians. You have to make compromises.
Yeah.
Some maybe are bitter. But to know where is your place, you have to, in geopolitics, is very important, the realization, where is your strength and where is your weaknesses. And Europe definitely is weak when it comes to energy sources.
And natural resources in general.
This we'll talk about this, I call it green madness, and not only me, a lot of people. Really is like a shooting your own economic in the leg. And Europe it's making this decision, how you said, wrongly. All these decisions are made wrongly last 20 years. And that's why Europe is poorer. All the statistics I look at, Bulgaria, Ireland, and Europe in general, The poverty is higher.
Homelessness.
10 years ago, homeless roof sleepers in the street were 500,000 in Europe, in EU. Now it's 1.4 million sleeping roof in the street of Europe. And if somebody talk about prosperity, I saw the 11 principles now for my PhD, the research of EU. Everybody has rights to work. Everybody has this. It's all empty words. We're going to talk about propaganda, but this is all blunt and untasty propaganda, because I can tell you so many people now in Ireland and in EU, they give preferences to another people for jobs.
100%.
There is no equality. These principles are all empty words with no meaning, and we know that they are not. Everybody deserves health service. What health service? Is decline. In Ireland, is decline the health service. It's less people who work in the health service. You have more patients and the infrastructure and so on and so on and so on. Because EU leaders from Merkel and so on, from this time we will talk about it, they make the wrong decisions, and now the consequences we're going to pay them. And there are long-term consequences that are very bitter and very, softly say, unpleasant.
And not only affect us socially, but in general, culturally. So that leads on to the next question. How is propaganda utilized in the geopolitical scene?
Propaganda, first of all, it's very important. It's a very important tool when you, even if you like, protecting yourself or to weaken your enemies. And you know what I noticed that and I read that in the Cold War, Russia did not pay attention to the Soviet Union at all on the propaganda. They said, we don't need the propaganda. Our priority is to have modern weapons, enough weapons to defend ourselves and our allies. But they did not pay, and they paid price for it. So they learn now to have a much better propaganda. Propaganda is basically you inflated the numbers sometimes in your advantage, or diminish the success of the others, of your enemies, or using fabricated lies to discredit your enemies or the people you maybe in the near future you're going to consider as enemies. And now the Russian propaganda, they realize the mistakes they make in the Cold War, and Putin invested a lot of money in the propaganda. And now the EU, it's very unpleased with it. And they're saying everything which is even true facts, they're saying it's lie. Well, it's a weapon and everybody using it. So, I mean, when it comes to democracy, I'm sure in Russia they lie, but as well the Russian channels as well are stopping Europe. You cannot watch them, so you can't see different points of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not defending anybody here in this situation, but I think to have a clear view and to see the big picture, if you wanted to do that, you have to have different sources.
Yeah.
So propaganda play a huge role, and they invest a lot of countries and a lot of energy, and I think now the Russians are very competitive in this field as well, and Europe in a way losing the battle there.
But even in their approach, they're just straightforward. It's a dictatorship. At least they're not promoting that democracy exists, and if they do, it's well known that it does not.
Well, officially they do, but generally, everybody
knows.
In Europe, in Russia, they know that it's not no democracy.
And that's not going against it, but it's just their approach.
And again,
I think it's
exactly.
It's honest.
In geopolitics, every politician should be very well read. Kallas, which is the foreign affairs minister of EU, absolute disaster and embarrassment. She said now, recently, yesterday or the day before, that she's going to read more to educate herself. She said a few months ago that the Germans won the Second World War. You cannot have uneducated people with not knowing basic historical facts, not because I'm first historian, I'm saying that, because when you're a major player, especially represent your country or the EU in a huge union, you should be very well read, because if you don't know history, you miss the points in the geopolitics. You don't understand properly the geopolitics. if you basically you're saying that Germany won the Second World War, it means that actually I was asking myself, did you go to school at all?
Yeah.
And now to read, no, you have to read before you become in this position. Not I'm going to read to educate myself to don't talk rubbish on the and then they're surprised why in China they sent a bus to collect them, the leaders of the like low cost tourists who came for a €5 trip. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for all of us, you know, and that's why it is important to the politician has to be educated and to know where we are and what is our strengths. And all these politics strategies, they have an impact on the EU citizens all over, from Bulgaria to Portugal and from Sweden to Italy. So my next question is towards you. What is the ethnical and the religious? Did it change the religious and ethnical face of Europe, and when this started?
Well, of course. There were some preliminary attempts for it to occur from, we'll say, the early 2000s, but it was more notably focused with Merkel's reign, when in 2015 some people, as they put it colloquially, opened the floodgates for refugees, immigrants, for the legislative process to change, for them to be validated. And then you can see what the decision made, what is it now? We're 12 years ago, how it affects and how it has grown into an even bigger issue. Because now in the UK you have, on average, 500 refugees, illegal refugees. You've gone past the legal barrier, the floodgates opening. 500 refugees, that is a small village entering on a daily basis in the UK. And you've seen, even though they're not a part of the European Union, which we're also focusing on, they are still a European country with a European identity, with their own European history. Whether you like them, whether you dislike them, obviously we're in Ireland, we have our own postulations and, historical rubbings, we'll say, but it's not about this. It's about focusing on, is the European culture being lost? Is the heritage being lost? And it is being lost, because in 2010, and this is not to target a specific ethnic group or religion, there was 19.5 million Muslims. In 2026, there's over 46 million. And it's projected that in the next 10, 15 years, it's going to be 50, 60 million. 74% of the applicants to come into Europe are, accidentally in Spain, Italy, France, and Germany. Once they get that refugee status in those countries, they're free to travel anywhere within Europe. However, you also have, obviously, with the placement of, Spain, with its close relation to, you have the other continents. It's pretty obvious which they are. I don't need to name them. With the boats coming in, with the issues, not only can they stop them legally, but the illegal migrants are also welcomed into Europe. And what people will say, but they're fleeing from war, but they're fleeing from this. You cannot enter a country when you've already broken the law. By being in the country, you've already broken the law.
Without documentation.
And the thing is, it's not people fleeing from it. It is primarily men. Men. What about the women? What about the children?
Recently in England, it's a news that one terrorist was convicted terrorist. Is running to be a mayor in one of the main cities in England. This is softly said shocking.
And even a week ago you had the newly appointed Youth Minister of Health, which was a woman that's overtly overweight.
Well, I have to say here that it's a bad advertisement for health, isn't it? Can you imagine I smoke and tell you don't smoke, it's bad for you, and I smoke in front of you 20 cigarettes every day minimum. I mean, it's and the first time in London we saw that again, we are not against any Muslims. I have Muslim friends, but it's come to the point that it's given to somebody a lot of freedom and consideration, money, energy, and so on, but in the expense of the Christians or the Europeans. And that's I'm just saying that it's not fair. In London, for example, the first time in history, there were lights for Christmas, but none of the readings is there like saying Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
It's like some celebration, but what celebration? Not everybody knew, but because the mayor is a Muslim, he wouldn't put anywhere Happy Christmas. But when it's a Muslim celebration, they put, Ramadan or whatever might
But
be.
even you had the Christian walk being cancelled in, was it in London that takes place? The Christian walk, which is a peaceful walk, which is just a demonstration towards your faith. Any person has the right to practice whichever faith. This isn't attacking one faith over the other, but it's about how the European identity has always been related.
But again, here it's our fault. Like going back to geopolitics, our new leaders, they don't last year 20. Like talking about Russia, to understand, you have to, when you deal with people, you have to know the history of these people. You have to know that, for example, Russia never had democracy, really. A part of Eltsin, because in disarray, the state was in very bad shape, the crime was very high, and so on. So to understand, when you're dealing with people, you have to be well read. Russia really had very small, very brief period of democracy, and it wasn't very rosy.
Yeah.
So when you deal with these people, or you deal with China, or you're dealing with Europe, you have to know the mentality of these people. You have to read. You can't be a leader without knowledge. And leading again to the question, because again, when you deal with, for example, again, we are not against the Muslims, but when you deal with people from Islam, you have to know them history. They have to know the religion.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I study history of Islam. I read most part of the Quran. So I know where they stand and the fundamental beliefs of the Muslim. I know there are different branches, but what is the fundament of Islam? And this is leading to my next question, because here mainly rising the Muslim population in Europe, they coming from everywhere, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and so on, India. What is the outcome of those changes, ethnical and religious changes of the face of Europe, EU?
Well, you can look at many European countries. First of all, since nowadays it was in 2021 or 2025, in the last 5 years, there was one specific year where over 1.3 non-documented illegal migrants were accepted into Europe, because they somehow were able to get in, and they're having the issue of returning them back to their own countries. 1.3 million illegals entering the country. You don't know if they have mental problems, what their intentions are, first of all, when they come in.
They could be terrorists.
They could be
I'm not saying that all are terrorists, but you could have few of them.
Yeah,
and you take only 1 or 2 or 10 to do something really.
And what are the chances out of 1.3 million that all of them are mentally okay, that are all coming in with the positive intentions to integrate and not rely on the European social system to just, even just to become a financial burden towards the taxpayers at the least? Because when you have even one person that comes in with malice intent, takes one life away, that's just not one person affected, not one state of terror, not one incident which will be reverberating across that street for a very long time until people forget it. But that is a family, those are friends, that is people branched off that are being affected. And when you look at statistics nowadays, I want to focus on Britain again, because I do believe that is most notably the closest state to Ireland that has fallen. It has fallen. It is no longer what Britain used to be 100 years ago. And there's an interview from a British, from an English, he was England obviously, English veteran that fought for them 80 years ago. He was 95 in the interview on national television. He goes, with the way that I see the state and the country that I fought for, the culture that I fought to protect, I regret it. I have friends that have died, and the friends that I made while I was in the army, the wars that I fought, the things that I've seen, I regret, because what you've done to this country is not what I fought for. Mm-hmm. And the news reporter goes, well, the And the person taking the interview goes, "Oh, but that's a horrible thing to say." He goes, "No, this is not what I fought for. What I fought for and what my friends fought for was not this."
But
This-
it's important to say UK, even though they're not in EU. Let's not
No,
forget that
they're European.
They're the most dense population in Europe.
Absolutely.
You know? So
the
it's a big country.
rates in the UK from 2010 was 15,000, which is still a horribly high number. But nowadays, in 2020, well, we say it in 2026, 2025 rounded off, was nearly 100,000.
Can you imagine?
Which
And here again, we're coming to this to understand the mentality of the people who you're letting in or deal with, say, big country when it comes to the international politics. Most of the people coming from those countries like Afghanistan, they look at they in their mind, the European women are a price.
yeah,
It's a price, a price or a prayer. You
Yeah.
know? They think I can do anything I wanted to. They're troll-ups.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to use this language, but that's how they view the European women. And this statistic you found is shocking. From 15,000, which is huge still, to go up to 100,000 raping. That's in UK.
15 years.
That's only
in the UK. That's 15 years.
You can imagine in Europe.
50,
The
and
rest
that's
of Europe.
documented.
The rest of Europe.
Nowadays, we know the propaganda in the UK. We've seen it with the online acts where they're arresting people for expressing their own opinion and they're putting them in prison for years. But the people that are committing these rapes are getting put in on community service. Community service. And you're looking at, okay, where does this stem from? So you need to look at why it has stemmed from, and we're focusing on, yet again, immigration. Who's entering the country? Now with the emphasis and what country we're accentuating upon our focus is Britain. Well, you have 55% of British Pakistani marriages being towards their first cousin.
And what is the consequences of that?
The consequences is...
because probably most of the viewers and the listeners know, but let's tell me what is the terrible consequences, because there is terrible and not only one consequences of this.
Yeah, it's all a knock-on effect. This is science. I'm not stating, oh, this part of their ethnicity is incorrect or this. I don't care. As long as it doesn't harm the European identity, I don't care. But that's what it is. It harms it. Because ancestral marriage, especially towards your first cousin, is proven to lead towards not only hereditary diseases where the child suffers, but also that the brain chemicals do not... It's this issue that occurs, illnesses that occur, and the IQ points drop significantly. The closer the blood relation of the people that are parenting, that are parents fostering this kid, the closer they are, the lower on average IQ points it has. The average IQ, I believe, is 70. Children of first cousin marriages are significantly below that, where they can be considered somebody with a mental illness, maybe Down syndrome, but they're not. That's the thing. They're not. They're half adequate human beings, and that has also led scientists recently, in recent times, to do research, and it's proven. I'm not hating on a culture. I'm not hating. This is numbers. This is science speaking.
It's science. It's a matter of facts.
That there's the people with lower IQ, in general, tend and have a higher chance, the propensity to result in aggressive behavior towards communication levels not being correct, so lashing out, and also crime rates going up, and also that behavior translating into every single aspect of their life, because they're cognitively not impaired to do so. They don't have that capacity. So when you have cultures as such being promoted and stated that it's correct, and you have children and they're harming innocent people, this isn't hate.
But that's why I'm saying I don't care who is coming from what culture and religion. If uncle marries niece, if first cousins are married, and that has an impact on the whole society and so far, including my family, for example. We haven't, but thank God, and probably never, but if it has a negative effect, I don't care about your culture. If you don't contribute, and quite opposite, you harming the society, and you don't contribute to the society. All coming from negative because you think that it's okay to marry first cousin. That should stop. And
Absolutely.
Here we come to the law that as well the law is not adequate in Europe. they should not be allowed first cousins or to marry an or uncle with a niece.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that, because then not only the children of how you mention it suffer from this awful and not right marriage, if you like to say.
But it harms the innocent
harms
society.
the innocent members of the society. And the percentage is huge. You told me the percentage there, it's huge.
55, I couldn't believe
that's
it.
in UK, but that's happened in Germany. That's happened in France.
Especially if you looked at the Sweden even. The people in Sweden are becoming a minority. There's less white Swedish people in their own country. There's I forgot which major town. It might have even been the capital, where there's less. There's in the next couple of years they're projected to be 40% Swedish people.
But you know why is that? Because it's the consequences of a lot of wrong policies are implemented in Europe. Like we talked in one of the podcasts that now it's promoting. We have a poster here nearby. 2 years ago, the perfect family, young couple, and a dog on the middle. The EU kind of stress and invest energy and money and promotion of we don't have to have children. Actually, all the legislations, or not all the legislation, but all policies go against the family. They're against the traditional family. So even in Bulgaria, it's considered as a heroism if you have 2 kids. Oh my God, you're so brave to have 2 children. And promoting this, like all animals are more important. Traditional family, that's
live your youth.
Live your youth, have kids of 40, 50 years of age when...
and that also, in itself, proves another factor, where you have the older that a woman is when she has her child, that it's not only unsafe for her to bear the child because the body's older and it's not at its peak, and that's biology speaking. That's not me saying, oh, women should... It's your choice at the end of the day, but that choice affects your culture, your country, and the population of that country.
Exactly.
So when you have children at the age of 50, and not only does the mother have a higher chance of possibly passing because she's not at the age, that peak female production age, but also there's a higher chance that the child is born with some sort of physical or mental disability. And that is science. If you don't agree, search it up, you can look at it. But that's why it goes against. You cannot choose freedom and living your life and taking care of 10, 15 dogs if you'd like. I have nothing against dogs. We even have a pet parrot, you know. Yeah. But it's about the decisions that you make and how it affects the society in general. When you're promoting something that goes directly against what society should be striving towards, and you're seeing the deleterious ramifications of what's occurring, and you look that you're promoting the opposite of the outcome of what's going.
But here, I probably a lot of women will be hurt about that. But that's the truth. That's the truth, and we like it or not. And going back to the geopolitics, friend of mine said, I said to him, the bigger players always do whatever they like. It's a matter of fact. With the women, if they give a birth 40, 45, it's a matter of fact. The higher chance of the children are with some disabilities, or the woman has a complication with giving birth. They said, your points are weak. Russia did that. United States changed for 100 years 77 governments in South America. All indirectly, 17 of them directly. Russia do war. Oh, that's not. I said I'm not defending Russia or United States. That's a matter of fact. The big countries play whatever they like, and the weakest one have to follow. It or not, suffer or not, they have to follow. It's a matter of fact. No, I'm not defending anybody. With the women, it's the same. Nothing we're saying. We're just saying it's a matter of fact. If you're giving a birth 40, 45, it's a high possibility there will be complication for you and your baby. And we saw recently with that guy who said to me last week, the next days they kidnap elected president of Venezuela.
Yeah.
We're not going to go deep, but this is it's not very
That's
democratic.
Still taking charge, you know.
At least the mask has fallen off and they show them true face. I don't know. if we like to discuss a bit more about the legislations and the international laws, because they apply to Europe. For example, UN, it's nothing that one organization with a face there, but it's not real power there. Here, going back to propaganda again, people believe of democracy, of international law, but nowadays prove it so much that international legislation, lacking the history, mean nothing. The League of Nations was transformed after the First War to UN, so to be more efficient and more to be respected the international law and so on. You see today that the strongest country, whatever they do, if Israel decide to take Palestine, they take it. If Russia decides to attack Ukraine because they feel threatened, they do it. And the international law go to the being. And it's a matter of fact, it's sad, maybe bitter, but that's the way it
unfair,
works.
A lot of people say, but that's unfair what occurs in this world. Well, the world is unfair. And they say, oh, but you surely support one side. I go, no, there's a few superpowers in this world. You have China, you have Russia, you have the US. So by making such a statement, I support all three of them, which would be of conflict, conflict of interest. I can't support, let's say, all three of them because they go against each other. And they go, no, but you have a very pessimistic worldview. No, there's a difference between being a pessimist and a realist. Because
look, let's give a simple example. Say today we make a contract with you and me for something, and say I'm in the strongest position. In this contract, it's written that in my favor. And you sign it because you're weaker. But generally speaking, bluntly.
Yeah.
But in a year or two, if you become stronger, you can rip it off and throw it in the bin. It happened many times in history. The Ottomans were collapsing after the First World War. They agree with something, but when Mustafa Kemal Atatürk took the power and they beat the Greeks, they disagree. What I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Lausanne was agreed. They said we don't want this agreement. They didn't. The superpower didn't want again to have a war, major war. And they accepted something that few months before they were agreed on. They said no, we are not agreeing now. So I mean that's the way the world works. And the solution, how you call illusion, and living in this fantasy that international law is respected. It's actually harmful.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you look at it on a small scale, I just had a lecture on this, on a contract being signed between somebody that has more power than the other party, and how the courts want to try and diminish that from occurring, because legally they can't say, well, we want to side with the weaker side because obviously you have the financial preponderance, and there's many exemptions and clauses and so on. But in the end, I forgot which judge, I think it was either a Irish ruling or a ruling over in the UK, that said simply because one side is more powerful, whether we like it or not, that does not mean that it's illegal what they are doing in terms of specific situations in the contract. So if you can look at it from I wouldn't even say national point of view, from a specific scenario where this can occur, where if the the side with that financial capacity can win on small scales, private conflicts, and that is not deemed illegal, I'm not saying that it should be, but they're stating it's unjust if we do it. What is to stop the most powerful world political leaders to do that on a larger scale? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Unfortunately, for a lot of people, this is terrible, but that's the cold, maybe unpleasant truth. And I tell you, because I'm going to bet money, not that I want this to happen, but I know it will happen. I believe that it will happen. Again, I'm not for happening, but I'm going to bet money that Greenland will be taken by United States this year, or the latest before the terms ends of Trump. Because I know that international law means nothing when the superpowers want to rewrite it.
Yeah.
And he has an eye on it, and I'm going to bet today money the Greenland will fall under the Americans. Again, I'm not saying it's right. It's nice, but that's the way the world.
And that's if he really wants it. We don't know, in the background or whatever his ulterior motives could be. If I don't know if he's just doing, he has quite sporadic statements just to, Trump does. But if that's his real intention, if that's really what he wants,
Well, he's talking about long time about it.
but
Well, let's see. The future will prove me wrong or right. Again, I'm not for United States take Greenland, but that's the way it works, and I think it will happen.
Because
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
The future will show if will disprove or prove me right.
But they have a population of what, 57,000. So
Between 56, 58,000. Yeah.
So if he drops a 30,000 U.S. army, if the U.S. were to mobilize an army for a major war, they can bring up to 1 million soldiers. That's mobilizing. Without mobilizing, it is no problem for him to drop 30,000 U.S. soldiers there, where they have already bases there. This is a hypothetical. If he really wants
I don't think that it will go that far. It will be some peaceful solution there to take Greenland.
Oh yeah.
But you're right. They're the strongest army. They have the biggest number, the highest number of
even aircraft carriers.
They have 11 aircraft carriers. Nobody else has that many. Even
Russia has 2 or
Russia,
3.
China, and Britain combined. And France, they don't have that many, if I'm not mistaken. I think he will take it in somehow Greenland, unfortunately for them. And somebody said, "Oh, but this is terrible for NATO. That will be the first time somehow we see how it will develop. One NATO country will attack NATO country." I mean, it's not the first time. In 1974, Turkey, member of NATO, attacked Cyprus. So it's not the first time. Probably. Unfortunately, it won't be the
last time. Yeah, history repeats itself.
Yeah, and again, it's proved that the big players, they write the law, they rewrite the agreements if they don't like the old ones, and that's the way it goes. So, what we can do, pray that there'll be less injustice
Yeah, now that we've touched off the general, hegemony of those powerful countries, now bring it back to the European sort of scale, smaller scale, not globally. But what other factors have contributed to the ethical and religious, we'll call it diversification that has occurred in Europe?
First of all, we're losing our identity. And I think I said it and stated in another podcast. For me, stealing and trying to destroy identity, it's a crime. And the outcome will be that Europe will become something that is completely different if it goes the way it goes with these leaders who really die hard for the globalization. And the other thing is that the Europe as well, the decline of the economy will go further. We will see where the Europe spent a lot of money. Europe doesn't spend money to promote families and people to have children. They spend money, for example, Europe is behind, and that's direct link to the ethnical and religion phase of Europe. The outcome is terrible because Europe is behind the United States in high technology and Japan. Instead of investing a lot of money for the high technologies and try to catch up with the Americans, maybe it won't happen for 1, 2, 5, maybe 10 years. But if you, like China, invest now with this long-term strategy, it is possible. And talking about, you mentioned the 5th year plan in the Soviet Union, but North Korea, it's a absolute capitalistic country, and they have almost the companies, they have a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
So it's proved that again that long-term strategies, if they are in the right direction, they are done smartly. That's the only way to develop your economics or whatever it might be. So the outcome will be terrible. We will have one Europe that is faceless or become more as a Muslim state. And again, I'm not against any Muslims, but we go against the fundament of Europe, and it's a very distressing part for people like us when you see the Olympic Games mocking the fundament of Europe, and that's the Christian religion, when you're mocking Jesus Christ and his apostle, even though they said that it's not, we saw it very well that it was, that's the intention was to mock Jesus Christ and his disciples. And that's central of, if you like, in the heart of Europe, Paris. It's happened. And I think if Europe doesn't change, the outcome will be terrible for people who believe in the old values as a family, community, democracy, if you like, because let's not forget, there is no death penalty in Europe because they follow the Christianity in this sense, and that what we are today is because of Christianity. The fundament of the European cultures, if you like, in all of them, from Lithuania to Portugal and from Sweden to Italy, we are all different and we are all unique, but in the same time we have something in common, Christianity, and this core of belief that it's make us survive, help us to survive over the centuries, and we are what we are because of Christianity. It doesn't matter if some people like it or not. And if you take this core, this root from Europe, Europe is dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And following, talking about end times, what can we do in the present to defend, or more so sustain, our European identity?
I mentioned already a few things. The policies completely has to change. First of all, talking about geopolitics, I think Europe should change these leaders, because we see they're hard-headed. They wouldn't change. They just, in their heads is war in the East. War never brings anything positive. The outcome of war is always negative. No matter how unjust some people find it in Ukraine, what's happening. Again, that's a superpowers. They do whatever they like. But what we expect for people like Schulz, who is linked his family to the neo-Nazi party, Merkel, which as well is linked to the neo-Nazi party, her grandfather, Kallas, who was SS officer's grandfather. This is people who grow up with hatred in the houses, and it's sometimes it's look very hypocritical when 2008, I think Europe proclaimed as the year of dialogue, and these people are looking for war. It's becoming, how I said in the beginning of the podcast, is empty words and empty principles. Start to make peace in this when it comes to geopolitics. Make peace with the Russians, even though it's a bitter peace. Make peace, normalize the economical relationship with them. Because this sanction, they harm Europe as well.
Yeah.
Economically. Spend the money, encourage families to have families, to encourage people to have children. Provide them kindergartens or a crash, how we call it in Ireland, for free or something affordable, so people won't have this burden. So it will be easier for them to have 2, 3, 4 children.
And work, and that's the main aim of these children gardens or crashes, so the parents can work. Also, instead of have open borders, this globalization has to stop. No.
And has to close the doors. Not completely, but...
Prioritize, each country should prioritize their own nation.
All nation and all citizens.
And it's funny because a lot of people say, well, you're not Irish. And I go, yeah, that's very easy to spot. Yes, that's very true. And they go, so you're talking against yourself. And I go, well, that's a very obtuse way to put it, because, I'm two of my parents came here 25 years ago. Obviously, you first had done my mother. The moment they've stepped foot, legally, with dual citizenship nowadays, and even then, they
I don't even want to go there, because I was checked like a criminal, which it was absolutely. I was coming out from army, but never mind. The moment they stepped foot, they've been working. When they were working, when you were in the healthcare system, and my mother was in the sewing industry, 12-hour alternating shifts, so that they could, live, take care of us, first of all, make enough money to obviously contribute still to the economy, which is still taxes, didn't rely on the economy, didn't sit down, do nothing, no criminal records, and are fostering a healthy, environment for the kids. From a very young age, I was disciplined to
to study, to not behave decadently, to have a certain level of morality, and to also be ambitious in life and not just be somebody that floats around. And I go, yeah, well, if you have a lot of those, and most importantly, integration. We've all integrated. Oh, well, I've grown up here. I don't need to integrate. You know, I'm very proud of the Irish history. I'm very proud of the Irish culture. And in a lot of moments, I realize how I behave. Even with Irish nationals, you know, I can be accepted because I'm willing to. Now, obviously, it's easier for me. I've grown up in this. But I've debated Irish people my age, and they're not as passionate about Irish history as I would be. And I'm not saying that in general. But I'd have people, you know, and it's not, you know, my age, not even in secondary school, sometimes, but that won't take history as a class, and then you'd ask them, they go, who cares, that was 100 years ago. Well, no, it's your history. If you don't care about your history, who is going to care about it? And you know, when you have, and going back to that weak argument, I go, well, so what I've pointed out is, you have a family which is integrated, you have two parents, two adults, that have worked, contributed to the economy, that do not rely on other taxpayers' money, and also are not invoking any hatred towards the nation that they live in, but rather to integrate and embrace that history, because even if you look at it, you have the parallel between two warrior nations, the Irish and the Bulgarians. Both were fighting for their own sovereignty, Bulgarians against the Ottoman Empire for 500 years, and the Irish 700 years against the British Empire. You know, but that's being open-minded when you're here, and the willingness to integrate, to have that sort of bridge that you want to create, that correlation. So I say, yeah, I'm an immigrant, and you know, if I had the Prime Minister nowadays to say that we want to focus more on Irish people, I would not be offended. We fled our country because our Prime Minister, our presidents, our politicians done the exact opposite to us. So why would I be offended in any sense that if they were to say, look, I'm already here, you know, I wouldn't be affected, but the future immigrants, there's to close the borders, and they were to say, we want to focus on the Irish birth rate going up, on the Irish housing crisis to be quelled or mitigated, for the Irish healthcare to become better because it is absolutely atrocious. Homelessness to become, and we are all going to focus so that we can have a core, consolidated Irish society, proud of its culture, history, celebrations and traditions. Well, you know what? I'll say that's fair enough. I don't care. As long as you're not kicking me out, I'm willing to integrate today. You know, I'm open to this. And they say, but how hypocritical of you? You should be proud of your heritage. This is Ireland, and Irish people are born in Ireland. So why would I be offended if the Irish president, Irish politician was to say that we need to focus on our own culture? Absolutely.
Somebody stated, a politician from Europe, and it's quite right. What the context, what you're saying. How many, for example, a lot of countries from Eastern Europe are members of the EU and emigrate like me in the West, even though we weren't in EU when I emigrated. How I said they checked me like a criminal, even though I was just left army and I can't be a criminal.
You need to be
but now it's coming,
yeah.
You know, whatever people want to come and they don't have even documentation. But anyway, let's not start there. It's a bitter topic for me. Because the way I was treated by not Irish people, by authorities. I love Irish people, that's why I become Irish citizen. But and Irish history and so on. But it's how many Czech, Hungarians, Bulgarians blow themselves up or run around with a knife in a crowded street in Europe, stabbing people, or get a truck or a car and drove in a very popular street and killing people, or grab arms and shooting people. How many? Because they are in the core, they are Christians, they are brought that you don't do these things. This is absolutely wrong. That we have another people who came in, and a small percentage of them, they think that that's right.
Yeah.
I asking a rhetorical question. How many Europeans did that? How many accidents you had with people from Hungary, Bulgaria, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, who runs around with knife or blow themselves up, or they come most of the people to work to make them better lives, because we belong to the same core, the same fundament, the Christianity, and you're not brought that way to think.
And also, you can say, yeah, different cultures, but we're Europeans. Why? You know, we don't look over at the Irish and say they're that different to us. We have that instilled hatred, you know, from certain parts, because when you have immigrants from certain parts of the world that are filled with hatred and do not come from the overall, because obviously, being from the same continent, you've had wars with multiple countries that have been similar, and the history's intertwined, hands in hands. You know, you go Eastern Europe, you have the Balkan Wars. You know, you even go into when the Ottoman Empire existed. You know, with the Bulgarian Empire, you had the conflicts even in Christianity between who can have more power with the Orthodoxy. You know, more famously in Greece. So even there, when you've had conflict over the same stuff, you also understand each other's culture. And even when I dislike a certain, you know, part of our history or somebody else's history or what they've done to us, I know why they've done it. I'm not hating now on those people, but I hate what has happened to my people a couple of 100 years ago. But when you have people from totally different cultures that are filled with hate, and I focus filled with hate, and their only intention coming into the country is not to integrate and continue on that hatred and possibly even act on it, nowadays you're called crazy to say, well, guess what? I don't want them.
I think it was Clinton advisor who said to the Haitians or in New York or they were from the Caribbeans. They were trying to create Haiti or Jamaica there. Some of the Caribbean island nation immigrants tried to. He said, you cannot create Haiti in the United States. But you know what? They already creating Afghanistan in Europe. Nothing against this, but there is no integration at all.
No integration.
At all. And in disrespect as well, when you're not integrated, you're showing disrespect. You're saying, my culture is superior than yours. I don't want to have anything to your culture. Yes, I get the jobs. I get all the benefits from the state, but I do not want to integrate because you're lower culturally or mentally or whatever. I resented your culture, your history. I don't care. I'm here for the money and the benefits. And this is wrong, and it's very dangerous because you create these pockets that of whatever country they try to create in the heart of Europe, and this is a clash of cultures and beliefs and mentality. So we have to act. And I just want to throw one fact here. You were talking about asking me what Europe can do, because Europe don't realize, or the leaders don't want to realize, their tunnel vision, that Europe does not have the sources.
No.
Sorry, excuse me. For example, Nordvolt in Sweden, a failure, 8.7 billion. They try to make batteries for the electric cars and so on, but they didn't have the lithium.
Yeah.
This is a very isolated, but in the same time, for the whole EU, example of the, I don't want to use a strong word, but silliness. To create a factory for batteries and you don't have lithium. And now in Sumi is the biggest resources of lithium. The Russians almost took it. They spent 8.5. That was the biggest failure of a Swedish and European economics, you know, in generally speaking. And that's why I'm talking about it with this kind of leaders who doesn't have a clue for economics, politics, geopolitics. They only lead you like a blind man lead you in the forest.
Yeah.
And maybe there is bears, tigers. They can't see them.
No.
And that's why we were seeing the crash of European economics, of collapsing of society, if you like, because it's becoming disorder. You go to Dublin, you need extra policemen. It's Dublin last 20 years become unrecognizable. Because a lot of people who are not from here, they are some from here, but it's a lot who don't care less. And they do whatever crimes they want because this neoliberal approach.
And they view the people living here, the country that they already enter in, that they're superior, and the culture that they're entering in towards is inferior. The moment you have that mindset, nothing good can come out of it. Whether it's even on a small and maybe not as dramatic or traumatic scale, on the daily communication, you have an employee with, sure, maybe not hatred and willing to act upon hatred, but somebody that thinks that everybody else in this country is below them. Well, you'll never have a fully functioning citizen where that person in the workplace will never be a part of the team, where in society will never help society. That's the thing, there's even the human element. When you see somebody in the street, how will you act? I mean, if you're walking in already and you think they're inferior, there's no growth even from person to person.
But come to charity as well. Again, I have Muslim friends and I have huge respect for them, but in Islam, one of the pillars of Islam is to do charity, but this charity is only towards the Muslims. Christianity, there is charities towards everyone. Atheists, Buddhists, whatever religion there, the message in the Bible is to help anybody who is in needs, no matter what color, what religion, or doesn't have religion. Help. There is a love and help, the message of the Bible. And that's the differences. And I want to ask you here in the context, talking about Nordvolt and how also these spendings for lunacy, that it's finally ended with bankruptcy and it's almost spent 9 billion. How much the EU, you make a little research there, how much EU spend for promotion of, again, we are not against anybody, I have a lot of gay friends, but just to see where the money goes, the flow of money, how much is spending for promotional LGBTQ and green policies? For two these things, how much you spend?
Well, it's really hard to track the money trail when each individual year there's 150 different campaigns that you have to research to guess an exact number. Because even if you were to search up for 2025, officially how much the Helsinki Committee has put in, but then you have donors and then you have other parties. It's really hard to guess a really accurate and just number to where you can state it. But roughly, generalized research showcases from 8 or 9 to 2018 that over $700 million has been put into, specifically it's called anti-gender activities.
Euros or dollars?
Dollars. So if you were to...
Well, in US.
Yes, in US, that's what in the EU, but so the currency that I found this in was...
dollars.
The dollars was the research. So obviously, you flip it over, it's going to be roughly in and around that range. And that's also if you were to include being off by 100 million or anything. So even the currency exchange does not affect the statistic, but rather it showcases the same magnitude that I'm trying to, focus on. Against anti-gender activities in Europe. So when you have a campaign, an economical campaign, where you're putting, nearly $1 billion in 10 years, officially, that's without external donors from other parties, other campaigns, other fundraisers and so on, and you have, multinational corporations with their own funding as well for those particular work departments and so on. When you have the statement of this goal being not, establishing equality, but calling it anti-gender activities, at face value, you think that those people are being killed, you think that those people are being harassed, you think that those people are facing something so traumatic that you can correlate back to massacre, you can call it back to a genocide even, when in reality, the EU has adopted a far more open and acceptable approach in terms of people of, gender diversity and so on. So when you have campaigns even labeled anti-gender activities in Europe is not against anti-gender activities.
No, but the law, you study law, the law, which rightly so protect everybody. It doesn't matter what sexuality or...
So what's the point of those investments? People will say promotion because people don't know about it. Oh, trust me, we all know about it.
And when you have it, sorry to interrupt you there, when you have 1.4 official number for 2025 million of homes, people sleeping roof.
Yeah.
What about, you did as well research about the green
policies.
How much EU spend?
So in order to reach their green goals, out of their, SDGs, social development goals, so on. In the next decade, in order to reach those goals, even though they haven't reached them ever in recent history, they're willing to spend over a trillion, not a billion, not 100 billion, 1 trillion on reaching those green development goals within Europe. And I want to bring back this statistic to people that might find abstract or instantly jumping across. I actually saw on the internet, as I was scrolling, that Kate Perry, the singer or whatever she is there nowadays, had went over to a climate change, some sort of meeting, and in order to charity or whatever, celebrities invited. But for her campaign to sing, she had metric tons, she had planes, advertisements, everything. She had contributed to couple hundred million or maybe 1 billion polluted, contaminated air just to promote her campaign. And then you're inviting those people to go to green gold charities and climate change charities to help out. And you start looking at the multinational corporations again. You have all big producers are going to underdeveloped countries. They're extorting them for the lithium battery, for whatever they're producing. There's no development in fair practices of fair trade everywhere, because not every corporation in creating their technology or creating their product is following those rules that you see with the fair trade and production of food and fair payment. And then all of that through the poor following of the law, which is created to minimize abuse, unfairness, and consequently the climate development.
Actually, this is against. Basically make Europe poorer, less social justice. In Bulgaria is the highest price of electricity because they close most of the parts of the nuclear plants, and also they reduce to half what they produce from coal.
Yeah.
And they tax it really barbarically, I would say. And in Bulgaria, with one terrible combination of these green policies and taxations and extra taxation and corrupt government, and Bulgaria is a third world country.
Absolutely.
And whole Europe starts to look like, in any possible aspect, as a third world super state.
And now you see trillions being thrown into things that contradict each other, because those anti-gender activities, as they like to call them, are non-existent. Certain people, trust me, people that hate the gays, hate the LGBTQ, they always will. It's like racism. You will never be able to fully exterminate it. You can give rights to people, you can give them the fair opportunity, but I can guarantee you, if you have an employer that says, I hate Eastern Europeans, and I'm an Eastern European, and I sit down, he asks me in the interview, well, it's his word against mine. Where are you from? He goes, Bulgaria. And my name is scratched off the list. I'm not saying, I'm giving you a general example, not in Ireland, but in general. And he hates it. He'll say, the reason why this candidate was not put up for this position was because we had a better application from, blah, 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 blah.
There's written laws that you can't remove.
Yeah, you can't. So equality at the core value is everybody having that equal opportunity. Now, will everybody be provided with that equal opportunity on a personal level? You can't change that. If somebody's instilled to hate somebody, if somebody's instilled to hate whether you're gay, whether you're from a different country, whether you're from this part of the world, whether your culture is this, you will never be able to get rid of it all, of 100%. The law should help to fight that shouldn't be promoted, that hatred, but you will never be able to take that personal.
You can't eradicate it. Completely.
So then you ask yourself, okay, you have $1 trillion spent on green deals and all of that nonsense, and then you have celebrities, corporations that are the main fault of causing that climate change and the dissemination of this carbon dioxide fuels and so on. So the people that you're using to advertise it are one of the main causes for it, and then you have an issue where you're funding for anti-gender activities, which is not occurring in the EU. In fact, they're quite liberal in that approach. So where's the money going?
And we touch on that very well in one of the previous episodes. They're talking about healthy life of Europeans, and they promote at the same time to be fat.
Yeah.
all these women, you see them, with all my respect, but promoting being overweight, it's a crime because it's a matter of fact. It's not good for your health.
It shortens your lifespan.
But I said, no, it's fine. We discussed that. And that's another absurd that it's like, oh, you care about the health, but you know what? You can be 150 kilos. That's fine.
Yeah.
And promoting on the television, oh, look, you have clothes for you, creams, whatever. I know it's hard to fight. We talk about it. But it's so much absurd there. And in Europe, now it's obvious, for example, going back to geopolitics, that the war is lost in this. And America won't support Europe in that war.
Absolutely.
Oh, they said, if you want to buy weapons from us, you're welcome. But we don't want to spend any funding anymore this war. And even on the brink of... that's why I'm saying that now it's very similar in some sense, the story. Maybe it's not a pestilence yet, but the story like 1941. Or 44, when Germany lost already the war, but Hitler said no.
Yeah.
We're going to hold every city as a fortress. We'll fight for every city. Even though everybody knew that the war is lost for him. And now they're seeing that it's lost, but they continue pouring money, giving... and that's another absolute madness of geopolitical point of view of the politicians in Europe.
And then you combine all of this.
We're not going to discuss it's that right the Russia to attack Ukraine or not. But the war, it's lost. That's a fact.
You look at it from a social point of view. Why should more people keep to die for something
1 million people die already. For these mothers we talked before. For these mothers, it doesn't matter now who win the war. For the Russian mother or Ukrainian mother, for them it's already lost the war.
Yeah, they don't care.
The husband is dead or the son is dead. End of story. End of story. That is, it's unimaginable to lose some of my children. So, this madness in geopolitics,
and all of that
I understand it in a way why Europe acting like this, these leaders. Because if they openly stated that what they try to do, it's a total failure, it means they saying, well, we have a terrible leadership. And they cannot accept this. But there is the big politician, the statesman or stateswoman, when he can say, I make mistake, I'm sorry. I have to step down. Really what I did, it's terrible, I'm sorry, I'm stepping down. Like in a normal communication in the society, even if you're my son, you should listen to me, but if I make some mistake towards you, hurt your dignity in some way, I will come to you and say, I'm sorry, I wasn't right. Let's change the approach, or whatever might be. So these leaders, they are not real statesmen and stateswomen. To say, and they continue people dying and they're pouring money and encourage the war in the East.
People are dying and money isn't, money is getting spent onto something that will not benefit a situation. And now even you're looking at the three things: war, green deals, and campaigns for issues that do not exist in Europe. That money could be invested for the poor. That money can be invested to the homeless. That money can be invested for the public healthcare, because everybody in a private healthcare is going to be okay.
Also for new innovation to try to catch up with the world leaders of modern technologies. Because once you reach the best technologies, you sell them, you make money out of it. But we spend...
And you're more revered towards other world, powers, superpowers.
And more, I wouldn't say laughable, because it's maybe not the right terminology, but even the president of Ukraine went to United States and criticized Europe. They don't know help. How Europe doesn't help? We accommodate more than 4 million Ukrainians, helping them with weapons, with money, with moral support, any aspect of the support. And he saying even Europe continue helping, even though, and increase the help for Ukraine because Americans pull out since the President Trump won the election. And he goes to America and badmouth against Europe. And again, it's showing that even him doesn't have respect for the European leaders.
No.
I don't know where it's going, this, but it's a dark future for Europe if we don't change. That's my point of view, and I think many people you don't have to be super intelligent to see it.
Correct. And out of all of these numbers and campaigns that we have spoken about, Do you have any other statistics or numbers that you can add onto these unnecessary spendings?
Spendings, I know I mentioned Nordvolt, absolute failure, a lot of money, it's a symbol of European failure in general. We see Europe sponsor corrupt states. I clearly can say it. We can, who doesn't believe me, we can see how much money were given to Bulgaria, how much roads were built.
Oh, yeah.
Compare Ireland. Nobody asks where is the money, even though they know where they are. Nobody's arrested. This is billions of the taxpayers that is spent on somebody else's pockets. And mainly because because these leaders support the EU leaders. And the other thing, I think the administration of EU is huge. The bureaucracy is becoming huge. It's a burden. They should be changes and shorten up the red tape and the bureaucracy in EU. It's becoming very slow, very inefficient, and that's spent every year billions on this administration, which is if you're a practical businessman, you say, okay, invest 10 million, but what is the outcome next year, 5 years? And you see the spending on this administration is huge just to get people who support the European Commission, but actually the productivity towards the European citizen and improve the life in EU is zero, maybe even below zero.
Exactly, I agree. Now, that concludes our episode where we've covered many different topics. We've covered geopolitics, defined propaganda, looked at it, the application within not even the European states, but even with Russia, and the conterminous elements in everyone's approach, and the pestilence in Europe, whether it is occurring directly now, or we can argue that it will more notably be highlighted in 10 years' time, 15 years' time. People define it that it started now and in the past 10 years. Others will say until it doesn't get even worse, if we allow it to get even worse, that's going to be the quintessential portrayal of pestilence. But that concludes it. It was a long episode. It was, I'm looking at the time, an hour to 20 minutes. It was,
which usually it's not recommendable to be more than an hour, but we're sorry about that. We hope you learn something, maybe give you different perspectives of the geopolitics, economy, propaganda. And we hope to see us soon again. And please drop a comment if you're disagree or agree, or you want to expand on something. Of course, if it's a high number of interest of some aspect of what we touched today, we can do a
specific video. Absolutely, because it is quite.
We like to hear about your opinion. Please do.
And
even if you disagree with us, please do. We encourage all our viewers to drop a comment, and if they are opposite our view, fantastic. We want to see your point too.
Exactly. So. I enjoyed filming this episode. It was a heavy episode with a lot of numbers, stats, and discourse within it. But to anyone that has enjoyed it and is willing to hit the like button, don't forget, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And we'll catch you in the next one.